Hi, I'm Joe Sorge, and welcome to the Family Law Report, where we examine the problems and challenges facing our family law system. Today we are going to discuss a topic that I would have dismissed 20 years ago: biased judges. Are modern-day judges impartial and fair, or are they influenced by personal agenda, politics, and money? As the cost of running a successful election campaign continues to soar, are more judges selling out to big law firms and other big money interests? Because of the significance of this topic, this will be a four-part series. Part 1 will cover 2 actual cases where judges were pursuing a hidden agenda. Part 2 will cover forms of retribution suffered by attorneys who use a process called recusal to try to deal with judicial corruption. Part 3 will cover the problem with judicial elections, and Part 4 will cover the lack of oversight of our judicial branch of government. To help us understand these complex topics, we are fortunate to have New York City attorney and author Susan Settenbrino, who will give us an inside look at bias and corruption in our courts. Susan, thank you very much for agreeing to talk to us over Skype.
It's a privilege.
I don't think a lawyer's ever said that to me before. So, I know you started out as a district attorney in New York City and eventually went into private practice. What kind of practice did you have?
I mostly represented people concerned about their children. And I noticed that there was just extreme bias in some cases, and it was very clear that there was an agenda, it appeared, in certain cases, and the bias was striking. So I would immediately address the court if they were acting in a bias or engaging in conduct that was not appropriate, because the most important thing to me was to ensure that my client got fair access to the court. And if that was denied, what else was there to talk about? I needed to know that the forum was fair. But when it became apparent that the forum was not fair, that there was something else going on here, I had to address that immediately, because why else was I there?
Give us an example of bias that you observed in a case.
There was an order of protection hearing. And during the recess of the order of protection hearing, my client's husband went to the house and ransacked the house with his big friend, ripped out phone wires, broke the curio, scared the babysitter with the baby, took paintings and the safe and everything out of the house. He ransacked it. And the judge would not deal with this incident. So I said, how could you not deal with it? This is an order of protection hearing. He did this on your watch during the lunch recess. You should want to hear about this. My client had 4 girls. She was afraid to go home. So she went to family court and she told the referee the truth, because we were in Supreme Court. And she told the referee what had happened. And she told the referee the judge wasn't allowing her to deal with this. And the referee said, my God, it sounds criminal. And the judge gave her an order of protection. And when the judge gave her this order of protection, now she had an order of protection from family court that the Supreme Court judge didn't give. Now the judge was very angry because it made her look very bad. So on March 12, 2009, I had my clerk go to the courthouse to file my motion, but the clerk in the Supreme Court said the judge is going to not hear it as an emergency. It will be submitted into chambers. It was submitted into chambers. It showed that on the computer system that it was submitted into chambers. 3 o'clock that afternoon, opposing counsel just happens to go to the Supreme Courthouse and meet with the judge. Just happens to be under the guise of my motion, and they pretend, oh, it's 3 o'clock. Miss Settenbrino's not here. Oh, well. They went and engaged in a whole transcript where the judge was basically trying to protect herself, and I made the motion for a recusal. I laid down all these facts, and opposing counsel was ordered to answer. She not only failed to answer, she left the case, and the judge recuses her. She removes herself from the case. I become the target of investigations regarding this case. 4 years later, I go through, just recently, just the other summer, I go through 13 hours of interrogation. It's amazing. I have this. And they're trying to find every way possible to try and get me to say that the judge didn't do anything wrong. They want me to pretend that this judge had not engaged in misconduct. And now they want to pretend that there was no ransacking incident. It's incredible that they even care what I think about the case, but for some reason, They care very much, and they're using state-funded resources to exonerate, to protect the misconduct, egregious misconduct of this court.
Can you give us one more example?
There were so many different examples. There would be, had one client, he was falsely accused of domestic violence and sexual abuse of his child. It was very patently false, the allegations. The judge refused to allow a hearing on the matter and just kept imposing supervised visitation when there was no basis and there was no evidence to do that. And all I kept asking the judge to do was to please allow us an immediate hearing on the facts, because it was just a strategy to keep my client from his children. But the judge would not allow that. And what she would do is just keep delaying the proceedings, imposing supervised visitation, and this prejudice would just continue throughout the entire case, and we weren't resolving the issue.
Why might this judge have been biased?
There are many reasons, there are many reasons that we can all think of why somebody's biased. It could be as simple as just liking an attorney that they just know.
Do you think there could have been a hidden financial motive?
She was forcing him to go to a particular supervised center. This one particular supervised center where he had to pay money to have this center supervise the children.
Do you think the center could have been funneling money back to the judge?
People are very busy usually, and if they're going to take their time out to act in a biased, hostile manner, to steer a case a certain way, and they evidence an agenda, there's usually a reason for that. What the reasons are deserve an investigation, but since there's no oversight, you're not going to get that. But it was interesting because on this case, I actually confronted it, and the judge actually recused herself. She didn't want to deal with the facts and what was going on in her courtroom. And so when the case went to a different judge, the supervised visitation was instantly removed, and my client was able to visit with his child again.
So it seems that some judges are letting their self-interests interfere with their ability to decide cases fairly.
We need judges who are honest, who are also versed on the laws that they're presiding over, on what is domestic violence, what is abuse, and how do we deal with this, and how do we discern what's going on here? Because if somebody's making false allegations of domestic violence or abuse, right, and that person's not addressed, and they're allowed to ruin somebody's whole life and keep them from their children based on false, heinous allegations, that is unacceptable. That is just very dangerous. And if judges protect the person who makes false allegations, those same judges may protect the abuser in another instance where a woman is, or a man is saying, I'm being abused, this is going on. If they're going to act in a way that is unlawful and is not concerned about what the truth is, that's a lot of power. And if there's no oversight, it is extremely dangerous.
That concludes part 1 of the interview with Susan Settenbrino. Part 2 will discuss how the courts retaliate against attorneys who expose bad judges and who don't play the game. In part 3, we will discuss the reasons why judges are allowed to act out of self-interest and the ineffectiveness of our election process. Finally, in part 4, we will discuss how our system lacks the checks and balances needed to prevent judicial bias and what can be done about it. I'm Joe Sorge, and this is the Family Law Report. Thank you.